Testing 1, 2, 3. Commissioner Brimmer. May 2nd meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. This is your chair, Cammie Bremer, joining you remotely today. And for that reason, I'm going to kick it off to our vice chair, but I will be present in full and voting the entire time. It's just certainly easier to have her run when she can see what's going on in the room. So with that, this meeting is called to order, and I will be handing over to Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first item this morning is the invocation, which will be given by Pastor Joseph Winger from Boulder Street Church. If you'd come forward, and you're welcome to join us in prayer if you choose. Thank you. The National Day of Prayer Task Force sent out the theme for this week for the National Day of Prayer is James 5:16, and the last part of that verse reads, "The earnest, heartfelt, continued prayer of a righteous man makes tremendous power available, dynamic in its working." So let's pray. Father, on this week of the National Day of Prayer, for 35 years, it's been that first Thursday in May, and we join with that, and we just come into agreement that the fervent, earnest, heartfelt prayer of human beings makes somehow tremendous power available in the earth, your power. God, I'm asking that when we pray from the heart. We pray because when our hearts are moved, heaven is moved. We're in a day and an hour with such chaos that in confusion, we must just depart from weak, vapid, now I lay me down to sleep prayers. God bless the food. No, we lean in, we press in, and we say, we need your perspective. We need your wisdom. We need your dynamic moving in the earth. And so as humans, we obey this part of this verse. We call on you. Make dynamic power available in the earth. And so for this day with the county commissioners, I thank you that there will be wisdom in all the resolutions, appointments, decisions. Give them perspective. If there's something that they haven't seen or it's blocked or it hasn't been surfaced, bring it forth. They're asking for your wisdom and your perspective. And so we come into agreement with that. We invite you into our circumstances, our community, our concerns, our crisis, and our victories, and into our county and country. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. Commissioner Vanderwerf, if you'd lead us in the pledge.
The United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and I'm unaware of any staff emergency items today.
Item 4.
Item number 4 is consent to appoint deputy district attorneys, appointment of Catherine Decker and Daniel Garrity, Brent Nelson, assistant district attorney.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here today. If you'd like to introduce our applicants here and just any comments that you may have.
Thank you. My name is Brent Nelson. I'm the Assistant District Attorney for the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and all the commissioners for having us today. I'm here today seeking your consent to appoint 2 Deputy District Attorneys who come to us from essentially other parts of the country. In particular, they both spent a significant amount of time in what is referred to as the Sunshine State. However, I think they're realizing this is the real Sunshine State. This is somewhat of a homecoming in many ways, not because either one of them are native to Colorado, but because in their vast amount of experience, they've done criminal work, and they're returning to us, I think, in many ways because of the challenges and the meaningful work that we do at the District Attorney's Office in prosecuting crime and doing all that we can to make our communities safer. And so I hope that you've had a chance to look at their resumes. They both come to us with a great wealth of experience, and that's really exciting to us. Not only to have someone come in that's prosecuted in the past, but also somebody who's done other practice areas in the law. They bring a new perspective to the work that we do, and with Catherine Decker and Dan Garrity, I think you'll find very good candidates to do the work that this community in this county expects. And so I'll leave it to you to inquire of them or any comments, but I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Would either of you like to address the board?
I'm okay. I don't have anything that I need to say.
Okay, so is this a little bit of our custom here? We often, will have questions or remarks about resumes, but also just to get to know you a little bit as well. So I'll bring it up here for who looks like Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate your coming here, and I have taken a look at your resumes, and as is I shouldn't say often, right? As is always the case, they're very impressive. And so, without naming names, I just want to mention a few of these things. But litigation attorney working with children and families, lots of trial work. Thank you very much. It's awesome. Kids and families are things we need to protect and cherish. And when we have unfortunate circumstances when they are abused, it's important that we address those issues and get them corrected. So that's just great work. I see state's attorney's office, and I also see private practice on both of your resumes. I think that is really fantastic. And then with that, I see cases where you all have represented businesses, churches, and so forth. That's really fantastic. We need our churches are precious and important to us. For many of us who are people of faith, they need to be defended. Their rights need to be protected so that we can have free practice of religion in this country, which our Constitution gives us. But I see also Office of Public Defender, 18th Judicial Court, really great work. Criminal defense attorney work, and in that work, a lot of complex activity, complex legal motions, and I can tell you that we definitely most clearly work at pretty sophisticated levels here, so having that background in complex legal work is really, really wonderful. I don't know where you all stand on this, but while I am not a lawyer, I have been regularly attending a Federalist Society meetings, and some of what I learned there is just really fantastic. I think it's actually beneficial for my work here as a commissioner. So I would just like to welcome both of you, and I suppose I'll preserve it for Commissioner Gonzalez. He might ask what your favorite baseball or football team is. So. Commissioner Williams is going to ask that, so I'll reserve that for another commissioner.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to welcome you to the busiest district courts in the state, Judicial District. We had a problem-solving meeting on Friday, and I was speaking with Chief Judge. Sorry, I did ask him, how many new courts do you need? And he said, when the state asked him that, he said -1. He does not have any more space over there. He could use 5 new divisions. That's kind of scary to be a county commissioner and say that. But so what is your favorite sport, and who would be your favorite team? Or do you like sports? Would you rather just sit
no.
and...
I used to coach baseball for my kids. So, I mean, I would say football is probably my favorite sport, but I'm from Cleveland, so originally, so I'm still a Cleveland Indians fan, and they're still the Indians to me, no matter even if they change their name. But being in Florida most of my life, I guess I would root for the Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Okay.
I'd say my favorite sport is football. I enjoy watching football. My husband is obsessed with Tom Brady, so I don't know if there's any other Brady fans here, but we followed that team for a while, the Patriots. But I'm from San Diego, so the Padres. I love baseball, so I cheer for the Padres anytime. So
So we have a minor league baseball team called the Rocky Mountain Vibes. And the trick question would be, I think that the mascot's name, he's a marshmallow and his name is Toasty. But I think we'd have to, I was going to look that up. So welcome.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So actually, Toasty is a actual s'more. So he's more than just a marshmallow. He's the entire s'more. Just to correct that, make sure we know what our local mascots are. So, I guess ask us this for who are you supporting here for the NBA basketball playoffs? And just for the record, the Nuggets are still in the playoffs.
I don't watch basketball, so.
The Nuggets.
Are there any other comments from here? I just want to say
Commissioner
thank
Brimmer,
you.
we'll just say welcome.
Sorry about that, Chairwoman. Anything else?
Just welcome. We're excited to have you. And speaking about more than a marshmallow, a full, well-rounded, s'more. It sounds like you two are very well-rounded as well. And our district attorney is doing a great job of I think rounding out his office as well. So looking forward to the skills you'll bring to him. Thanks.
So I appreciate all of the work, as has been mentioned here. We know that this is a very busy office. I'm particularly grateful for in a time where we're hearing about a lot of district attorney's office that aren't pursuing crime and making sure victims get justice in an aggressive way. I'm very grateful for the work that happens here locally. So thank you for joining the team. And if there are no other comments, I think we are ready to proceed with a vote, beginning with Commissioner Williams.
Oh, we have to have a motion. So I'll move approval
sorry.
of our deputy district attorneys, Catherine Decker and Daniel Garrity.
And I'll second.
Okay, starting with Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
I'm going to go up to Chair Brummer.
Commissioner, aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Thank you. And the vice chair votes aye, so that carries unanimously. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to item 5.
Item number 5 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm unaware of any changes or postponements to today's agenda, and the next meeting will be today at 1:00 p.m. for land use.
Item 6.
Item number 6 is the consent calendar consisting of item number 6A through 6X2.
Are there any comments on any of the items on the consent calendar?
I will move approval of items 6A through item 6X2.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments on items on the consent calendar? Any comment from the public? So hearing no comments, and we will go ahead and proceed with a vote, starting with Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Chair Brummer.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. That carries unanimously. Item 7.
Item number 7 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Okay, are there any countywide elected officials in the audience or online? Okay, so we'll bring it up here, starting with Commissioner Williams.
Well, I was hoping that we would see Assessor Flucher here today, but maybe that's going to be another week. We received a fascinating report from him on the increase in property values as high as 56% in some areas. Mine was 52% in Briargate. That was pretty amazing. Makes me feel like I have a lot of equity in my house, so I hope that doesn't come down. But It was a very high increase. I know the governors and the state legislature is concerned about that. We at El Paso County, we do the assessments, we may collect your taxes, but our meal levy still stays low. So because we are not debruced from the Tabor spending cap, that means you would probably get a refund of a lot of our portion of taxes. But in your school districts and other special districts that have debruced, that means you're going to be paying more school district taxes. So I would recommend that you hold your school board accountable in a civil manner. There was an article in the Gazette yesterday about a little bit less civility at some of our meetings these days. So we did have a meeting last week, very fascinating, discussed the 4th Judicial District problem solving, just fascinating, the number of courts that they have that are specialty courts that actually operate on a diversion basis. I think that it's very creative what they are doing and helping people so that we can reduce our rate of recidivism. Also, I was able to attend the Goodwill dinner. It takes me a minute to remember which organization it was. And I do really enjoy the success stories that they give, people who really faced some serious problems in their lives. And one lady had a stroke and has brought her life back up to par. And I appreciate Goodwill for assisting these individuals in our community, helping them get back on track. I think it's one of our many excellent nonprofits that works hard to provide a service to individuals in need. So this week, we have, of course, our commission meetings today with a commission meeting at 1. Tomorrow, I have the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority, the Pretrial Services Community Advisory Board meeting, of which I'm a part of because of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Also, I have probably a conflict because I have the Investment in Character luncheon at the same time, and I'm going to be meeting with the town of Monument on an issue in Monument. And then throughout the week, we'll have Pikes Peak Area Council Board of Directors on Friday, and I am hoping to attend the Sheriff's Office Academy class graduation on Friday afternoon. Just have become very aware of the importance of attending these events and welcoming our new officers on to staff. So thank you. That's it for this week.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So as far as events for me this week, tomorrow I do plan on going to the Boy Scouts Investment and Character Lunch. I'm really looking forward to that. I've been to that for several years, and it's a great opportunity to support the Boy Scouts. Also tomorrow, there will be a brand new flight out at the Colorado Springs Airport for a new airline, a small airline that is coming to Colorado Springs. The airport continues to grow. This is an airline called Uvelo, and their first flight will be tomorrow afternoon, and I'll be part of that ceremony. Really looking forward to that. And then tomorrow evening, I'll be participating in a community salutes event at the Flying W Ranch. Really looking forward to that. And that's supporting people that are going into the military. It'll be a great event, and I'll have a brief speaking role in that regard. Now, also on, on Friday, I'm looking forward to going to the graduation ceremony for the deputy sheriffs. They continue to get more deputy sheriffs into the sheriff's office, and that's great work. And we need to support those folks because they're going to be off doing a difficult job. And it's just great to just thank them for becoming a deputy sheriff, to celebrate their achievement, and wish them well, and to make sure that they stay safe. So that's always important to me. Also looking forward over the weekend, I believe we've got the Family Fun Day going on at Fountain Creek. I hope to drop by there and see a little bit about what's going on. And then Saturday night, I'm really looking forward to participating in the 39th annual Cinco de Mayo Scholarship Gala event. I think that'll be a ton of fun. And then We do have, let's see if I got anything else. I thought I had one other item. I think that's it as far as events. And I know that Commissioner Gardner, you might talk about this extensively with regard to some of the legislation that is going on. But I just want to talk about one instance that I think is just absolutely ridiculous. And that is the introduction of a new bill last night. It's called 303. It has massive implications regarding tax structure in the state of Colorado. Some parts of it you could maybe argue are good, but other parts we do not understand what the implications are. And it will be heard in committee today, introduced last night, heard in committee today, probably voted on by the end of the week. It'll give practically nobody in the state an opportunity to actually review it and provide stakeholder testimony that is well thought through. My objection to the bill, among certain things, and Commissioner Guyton, you may talk about it a little bit more, but my objection to this bill is the ridiculous rushing of this bill through the legislature, giving nobody an opportunity to really think through about what is right and wrong about the bill. And I got to tell you, when that happens, that really, really makes me very suspicious. Why is it rushed so much? So I find that to be a great disservice from the state legislature regarding its interaction with its citizens and what opportunities they may be. And I believe that is a referred ballot measure, so the citizens will get an opportunity to vote on it. But what they're discussing is what the content of the ballot measure will have. And I really think that the potential for it to be a great bill is there if we would just have time to actually look at it and offer inputs and improve it. But rushing it through in a single week at the end of a legislative session when there's a ton of other things all going on at the same time in the legislature, that is absolutely the wrong way to do it. So that I'll preserve my comments. There's plenty of other bills that I think are challenging and problematic, and Commissioner Geithner bring those up, but I just wanted to make this point on the record about rushing this, which I think is absolutely wrong. Thank you very much.
And we'll move on over to Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. So starting off with events and activities. So tomorrow, also try to participate in the Regional Water Authority meeting, which is mentioned, and then I am scheduled to go also to the Boy Scout luncheon as well. And then on Friday, I have my monthly State Board of Veteran Affairs meeting, which will be held up in Denver. So I'll go to that one. That rotates around to different locations. And then also, as was mentioned before, there is the Sheriff's Deputy Academy graduation class a Friday afternoon as well. And then a big event, the Family Fun Day, happening over at Fountain Creek Nature Center. I believe it's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I will try to get out there, and hopefully we'll be on the grill trying not to burn the hot dogs. But I think there will be also, I think, some pizza there for those that get to attend and participate. So it should be a great event. And then end Saturday with a wonderful Cinco de Mayo gala, and get to enjoy that as well. So I'll see see you at a lot of events this next couple of days, Commissioner Van Werf. And then I too want to talk about a couple of the bills. So one is Senate Bill 213. This is the housing bill that was going to take local control. The Senate did pull out, make a lot of changes to it last week, which had taken away a lot of the preemptions. So a lot of it was not mandatory, and it was ended up not being a terrible bill. However, I'm being told that this week the House is already looking to put amendments in it that will again turn it into a terrible bill and take away local control. So it's a bill that we have opposed. CCI, our Counties Association, has opposed it. I think we might have moved to a potential of amending or monitoring it. I don't recall if we did that because we had some faith that they were going to try to hold the line on the way the bill was changed last week. But we did have some, I believe we did agree to some mechanisms if they try to change it away from the Senate bill, that we would automatically go back to an oppose. And so again, we will be opposing this bill as I believe I'm hearing the changes and recommended amendments back into it that will take local control away from our local municipalities and entities. The other one is the Senate bill, which I believe is 303. This is the new bill to address the property tax increase that we're seeing and the spikes, and has already gone out in notices and making a lot of news this week. The public should be concerned about these public property tax increase spikes. We do have our Tabor limits here, so in our community, if you do have to increase that payment, it would be refunded back to you or proportionally. I'm not exactly sure the mechanisms, but I know we utilize an area that a method that gives it back to property tax. However, in other communities, that may not be the case. And as was mentioned, some of the other entities, the school districts may have a different mechanism, and you may be paying those full increases if something is not done. I did want to say that my big concern on this is that the legislature, the Democrats in control, saved this to the very end, the last several days, not giving anybody a chance to review it and make recommended changes or have a good analysis of it, as Commissioner Vanderwerth has mentioned. It looks purposeful to keep the debate to a minimal and any opposition to it to a minimal. A big thing here that scares me and should scare everybody, every taxpayer, is that the state is asking to increase how much money it can retain annually in this request. A 1% increase to the Tabor cap calculations so that they can keep more of your taxpayer funds. And they're going to say they're going to try to save you money in your property tax bill. They're going to scare you, saying they're going to save you money. What they're doing is trying to get a mechanism in place so that they can keep more of your money. It's a big bait and switch, and that's what I believe. That's my personal opinion. And let's not forget, this is caused because the same people who are saying they're going to help you with this bill this year are the same people who recommended the full repeal of Gallagher and caused this situation. 4 years ago, or how many years ago this happened, I stated this is exactly the situation we're going to be in several years down the road. Okay? This was predictable. This is exactly the outcome that good conservatives said would happen if that full repeal happened. And I'm very disappointed that a lot of local people also endorsed its repeal, because this is the situation they've created. And now they're telling us they're the ones who are going to fix it. Don't trust them. I ask that the board oppose this bill, and that I think statewide local conservatives should be opposing this bill if it includes the Tabor increase so that the state can keep more of our taxpayer funds, because I don't trust them with our taxpayer funds. Thank you.
Chair Bremer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. First of all, apologies that I am not there in person. Gratefulness to particularly our Vice Chair, Commissioner Geithner, but all of my colleagues and the staff there for ensuring I could still join with a very sick kiddo at home today. I am most sad today to be missing the National Day of Prayer proclamation, but you'll hear more from me on that in a minute. But I'm very saddened to not be there in person today. And I'm really proud of this board for doing that proclamation. In terms of my calendar and schedule, it's full of all the things that my colleagues all mentioned this week as well. And we'll just hope that things get better around my infirmary home front at the moment, and that I can make most of those.
And I really appreciate many of the comments that have been made, particularly around legislation that has been making its way through the legislature in Denver. I think it's of note that the legislative session will end next week, which I know I am looking forward to. It's not only because we always wonder what is going to happen next to us, but because it's a very, very busy time. I want to thank our government affairs staff who just works tirelessly. There really is no end of the business day at the legislature at this time of year. You know, folks are there till the wee hours of the morning very often, and even when they're not there, there are still things moving. And so a huge thank you to the staff who work so hard to monitor all of that and keep us all in the loop, and also to my colleagues who I know are watching that very carefully when bills are dropping and you're just getting word of them in the late evening hours, and then, you know, trying to figure out before the next morning when they're coming up what it is that's in those bills, especially some that are very lengthy. It is quite a challenge, and we are very fortunate in El Paso County to have fantastic individuals who are staying on top of all of that and working to make sure we can weigh in where it is appropriate. So a couple of the bills that have been mentioned are absolutely on the forefront. The land use bill, and I'm going to confirm that, yes, we took a monitor position when the preemptions were taken out of that bill to say, hey, thanks for listening. We still don't love this bill, but it is much better, and we're grateful that you listened to us with the caveat that, yes, if you put something else back in, we're going right back to oppose it, and that's exactly where we are today, is that many of the amendments are quite frankly, worse than the original. And so I remain opposed to that. And we've talked a little bit in here about what that means, taking away local land use control, allowing more things by right, allowing, or basically taking away the public's ability to come in and talk about what the land use issues that are coming, forward, and having a way to interact with their government on that, which I think is very concerning. And to be honest, it's a central plan. It's an idea that the state government knows better how to plan for land use and plan for how citizens live their lives, quite frankly, because a lot of what is in there is about climate change. It is about making a decision about where you should live so that you don't need a car, creating situations where we have a whole lot of density so that people are kind of forced into a particular lifestyle. I think it's very contrary to our American values as a whole, and having people make individual choices. And in addition to that, it's a contrast to our Coloradan way of life. The American dream wasn't a tiny apartment stacked on top of another one, though sometimes we all have to live in those situations. But it certainly takes away from the idea that there are a lot of people who want to live with a yard. There are a lot of people who enjoy having their little piece of ground. And so this is absolutely deteriorating what it is that we care about as citizens, as well as taking away that very key local control piece. So continue to oppose that. I think that there's a possibility that one of the commissioners may have to step out today to testify on that bill remotely because that is going on today. So we may see that in a bit. I also want to comment on the property tax bill. My colleagues have said it very well. This is absolutely a result of other failed policy, specifically the repeal of Gallagher, which did have some problems. But as many people said at the time, you can't repeal something and not have a replacement and not have thought forward. And that's exactly, it was predictable. This is exactly what we said was going to happen in this situation. And so that's really disappointing to see policymakers completely ignoring the realities that are in front of us. I think 303 would be exactly the same kind of a decision. It would be a very short-term fix that doesn't really fix the problem. I also think Coloradans are smarter than these politicians must think, because once again, they're saying we're going to lower your property taxes, but pay for it with that refund we were supposed to give you. Really what they're saying is they're not lowering your tax burden at all. They're just shifting the dollars around. And that's not fair to citizens. If we're going to we need to be honest as policymakers. If we're going to tell people that we're trying to relieve their tax burden, there's only one way to get there, and that is to spend less money. There's just no way around that. And, we continue to have those problems. I wish I had thought to bring a graph that I was given just yesterday, which shows the change in budget in the state of Colorado, and perhaps next week I'll have the opportunity to do that. But Tabor has done its job. It keeps government from growing at a rate that is not sustainable, that costs taxpayers a lot of money. But the government has gotten really creative at the state level and has figured out ways to go around that by charging you fees without your permission, as Tabor requires. And when you see this graph that shows the difference in what is actually allowable that the taxpayers have voted on and what are the fees that have been instituted without your permission, it is staggering what is happening here. And so again, I just say we cannot address the tax problem, taxes being too high, until we make the decision that we have to live within the budget of what the taxpayers have said. This is what I want for government. So I appreciate all the comments around that. Continue to look for that opportunity possibly today to also testify against that bill, and grateful for all of the vigilance on the part of this board to do what we believe that the voters sent us here to do. In addition to all of that fun at the legislative level, I too will be attending some of the events that were mentioned, and also have several constituent meetings and visiting with some of the businesses in my district this week. And that is all I have. So we are on to item 8.
Item number 8 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 9.
Item number 9 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Vice Chair, I believe we had Mr. Tom Martin sign in for public comment.
Mr. Martin, if you'd like to come forward, sign in, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Brett, I think he needs the overhead. There we go.
Spellings or anything, I apologize. Anyway, my name is Tom Martin. I've been reading a lot about how things happen and why things happen. How the policies and politics of our national government, state government, local government works. And I've come to a very interesting strategic operational method that's used by all governments, and it's called the Iron Triangle. You can look it up. It's how it works. And on this particular Iron Triangle, which is the counties, it's one where the ends of the triangle are developers, the top are the commissioners, and at the other end of the triangle are the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are the people that you hire for staff, whether it's in the regional planning or your planning commission itself, different things like that. Well, the developers, they give you campaign contributions. They throw parties and give you endorsements and help you get elected. So that goes up the side of the triangle. On the downside, the commissioners in return, they give directives to their bureaucrats to loosen building restrictions, like when we didn't do what the state wanted us to do with the energy efficiency mandates that they did, and you get people on the planning board that in the master plan committee, and they take out restriction and make it much easier to do weak rezoning and weak developments. You load the commissions, you load your committees, and you give tax incentives. You make affordable housing initiatives and give tax incentives to people that want to grow and develop. The bureaucrats in You instruct them to do that. So then the bureaucrats, they go ahead and they loosen the master plan. They approve weak rezones, and they loosen building restrictions as you've asked, which in return helps development. It's a cycle that's spinning out of control. It has spun out of control for 5 decades, my entire lifetime. It's obvious how this works. We need to slow down this growth. We're running out of resources. You're pushing into the key areas of the county. Your citizens are not happy. Our lifestyle is being threatened by this growth. The long-term citizens of this county are not happy. So some of the stuff in the new state initiative, putting higher density in the city of Colorado Springs, some of their initiatives on these new bills, I like because they're not destroying their natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Is there any other public comment? Item 10.
Item number 10 is the proclamation recognizing May 4th as the National Day of Prayer. Carrie Geithner, Vice Chair, Board of County Commissioners.
And if you folks that are here to join us in this proclamation, if you want to go ahead and make your way forward as I'm reading this, please feel free. I'd like to move approval of the proclamation recognizing May 4th as the National Day of Prayer. Whereas the annual observance of a National Day of Prayer dates back to a declaration of the First Continental Congress in 1775, and whereas the National Day of Prayer was further defined in a joint resolution of Congress signed into law by President Harry Truman in 1952, declaring that the President shall set aside and proclaim a suitable day each year, other than a Sunday, as a National Day of Prayer on which the people of the United States may turn to God in prayer and meditation at churches, in groups, and as individuals. And whereas the United States Congress in 1988, by Public Law 100-307, established that the first Thursday in May each year would be set aside to celebrate the National Day of Prayer, and whereas President Ronald Reagan most eloquently reminded us of the need for a National Day of Prayer in his 1983 declaration when he said, "From General Washington's struggle at Valley Forge to the present, this nation has fervently sought and received divine guidance as it pursued the course of history. This occasion provides our nation with an opportunity to further recognize the source of our blessings and to seek his help for the challenges we face today and in the future." And whereas the theme established by the National Day of Prayer Task Force for 2023 is from James 5:16, "Pray fervently in righteousness and avail much," reminding us to mobilize unified prayer for America in times of achievement and to heal, persevere, and prosper when faced with adversity. Now, therefore, the Board of El Paso County Commissioners joins leaders across America and hereby proclaims May 4th, 2023 as a day of prayer throughout El Paso County, Colorado. Done this second day of May, 2023 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Signed, Cami Bremer, Chair, Carrie Geithner, Vice Chair, Lohinos Gonzalez Jr., Stan Vanderwerf, and Holly Williams, members, and attested to by Steve Schleicher, County Clerk and Recorder.
Second.
Please feel free to come forward and share any comments that you have.
Sure. My name is Chaplain Palmer Kane Allen. I am from Virginia. I've been here in Colorado for the past 4 years. I'm a former police officer, an EMT. I was a chaplain at the Police Academy in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And I know personally what it means to have the power of prayer. The power of prayer can answer many things. It doesn't matter what faith you are. What matters is that we all learn to come together and depend on a power that is higher than ourselves. Prayer is always the key that gets us through the things that we think we can't do. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. Prayer is the one thing that gives each and every one of us the ability to realize that there is a power that is higher than ourselves, but that there also is a place where we can come to do for each other. So many times, my mother, who raised 22 of us, often said, our prayers 9 times out of 10 are answered by the means of other people. And here today, as you all are gathered, we're learning for the first time for me, first time I've ever been in something like this, I'm learning the power of legislature and the power of coming together, bringing things together for the common good of everyone. But prayer is the one thing that gives us an opportunity to know one particular thing I say every day on my Facebook page: never alone. And so we appreciate this day. I appreciate President Truman, who I didn't know had made this day that special day. And it's not just this day that we should make a day of prayer, but every day that brings us an opportunity to come close to each other, no matter what faith, no matter what religion, no matter what creed, no matter what color, bringing us together to at least take the time to realize how important each and every one of us are, as well as how important prayer is for each individual person in getting to know our Creator and the one who made us who we are today. Thank you.
Well said, Reverend. Thank you, commissioners, for this proclamation. I'm so grateful for that. And boy, you guys are really busy. I just learned that. Psalm 65:2 says, all humanity will come to you, the one who hears prayer. I believe it's innate, part of being human, to have a sense that we're inadequate. We cannot make it on our own. There must be some intervention beyond what we see, beyond our experiences here. We must have the ability to reach out and touch God and say, I need you. And so it's very natural to have one day of prayer in a nation to say, we're letting people pray as they like, because that's part of being human, is to reach out for help. And, we've got so many issues in our nation. So many. I don't want to focus on those. I mean, it's good to focus on those, but I want to touch on the destiny of this nation, on God's design and call for this nation. I believe sovereignty has a purpose for America in resisting tyrannical, oppressive, vicious governments, ideas that are evil and hurtful and restrictive to people around the world. And yes, we've got plenty of evil of our own in our nation, but I do believe that God has called us to be a resisting, restraining force in the world, and to manifest order, rule of law, freedom of choice for people, freedom of religion, and sanity in a world, on and on. In 2021, I was on an international prayer call with about 55, 60 people. There were 5 Americans, I believe, and some were from highly restrictive, oppressive nations, like mainland China, with the atrocities they're doing with the Uyghur people. And then there were people from Pakistan, at least a couple. And this couple from Pakistan, they asked me, they said, would you pray for a spiritual awakening in America? Because if America falls, we have no hope. We have no hope. I think we're myopic. We're inundated. I mean, my own life is that way, just putting out fires and trying to fix this thing and that thing and make a good decision when everything's changing. But we can't lose sight of the call, of the purpose. Many nations of the world are looking to us to help. When I lived in Guatemala, one of my best friends there, his uncle was the ambassador from Guatemala to Cuba. And he told me a story when there was some crisis. I don't remember what it was, but he went to his uncle and said, what are we going to do? And his uncle, the ambassador to Cuba, said, as long as the Americans are involved, we're going to be all right. We just lose sight of that. I've spent about a month in Pakistan. I've seen them burn churches. I've seen people for their faith just have their houses bulldozed down and houses. I've seen pictures of that, but I've talked to people. We We have purpose. We have destiny. We have problems. We've messed up in so many ways, but I have messed up in so many ways. But with my dying breath, I will say, I have purpose, I have value, and I have a destiny in the earth. And I believe El Paso County, Colorado, and the United States does as well. It's in our genetics, not to dominate and control, but to restrain certain oppressive things in the world. Reverend Robert Hunt offered the following prayer on April 29th, 1607 at Cape Henry, which is now Virginia Beach, Virginia. We do hereby dedicate this land and ourselves to reach the people within these shores with the gospel of Jesus Christ and to raise up godly generations after us. And with these generations, take the kingdom of God to all the earth. May this covenant of dedication remain to all generations as long as this earth remains. I'm told that Reverend Hunt would not let anybody come ashore, but for 3 days they were to fast and to get their hearts and lives right before they planted a cross and stepped on the shores of North America. There's something in our genetics. Sure, we didn't take care of the First Nations people. Sure, we've had slavery issues. We've had all kinds of issues. But in this National Day of Prayer, my prayer is to tap into the divine design and destiny and to make steps forward into that and not just get so consumed with the complexities and the issues. God bless us, and Father, help us. Help us. Amen.
Thank you so much for your comments and for being here today. And with that, I think we'll bring it up here for comments from commissioners. Commissioner Williams.
I can speak on the importance of prayer in my life, and I know we frequently are faced with very tough decisions here, and we have individuals who will complain about our property decisions or our land use decisions. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a hearing that went on for 12 straight hours, and amazingly enough, even the 5 of us disagree sometimes, and more often than one would think. And so I feel that frequently I come to these meetings with a spirit of prayer, because these decisions are very, very important. We're only here for 8 years or 4, and they're lasting decisions that affect our community, that help our community to grow, and they're not made in behalf of one specific person. At the end of the day, I have a whole large amount of voters that I'm accountable to. I wanted to just quote 2 of my favorite scriptures, James 1:5, if any of ye lack wisdom, let him ask of God. The other one is from the Church of Jesus Christ, which is, if I can get my phone to pull up, and when ye shall receive these things, I would exhort you that you would ask God, the eternal Father, in the name of Christ, if these things are not true. And if he shall ask with a sincere in heart, with real intent, having faith in Christ, he will manifest the truth of it unto you by the power of the Holy Ghost. And also, too, I think it's important to know that when my Savior, Jesus Christ, was on the earth, he spent an awful lot of time in prayer. And he would pray over different people and he would heal them. And so the fact that we set aside 1 day a year to pray, we really should set aside every day. I certainly have many, many sins and things I need to account for. And I feel that if perhaps I spent more time in prayer, that maybe some days I might have a better chance. And thankful I'm not perfect yet, so I've got a lot of prayer to do. And I just encourage citizens to take our words to heart today and to spend time in prayer for our nation, our country, our state, and for our local governments as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I am so glad that we do this every year. Prayer is so important, so important. And I deeply appreciate the invocation that we do every Board of County Commissioners meeting. It renews me every time. gives me the strength to fight for what's right. And there's so many things that we learn from our faith. God teaches us to love our families. God teaches us to love each other. God teaches us not to steal. That'd be a pretty good thing for a few more people to do, not steal. And we are a nation of faith. In so many ways, so much more a nation of faith, if we're willing to recognize it, than so many other places around the world. It's part of who we are, and it's part of why we're a great place. And you know, I come from a family of ministers, actually can trace ministers in my family, almost an unbroken line, back to the 1600s. There's a little town in the Netherlands called Spijk in Groningen, if you're ever curious about the region of the Netherlands. Interesting little place. There's a little white church in the middle of the town. It's a town of 400 people. There's 2 moats around it that are circles. There is no way to park near the church. You have to park on the outer circle and then walk in. And there's a plaque on there on the side of the church with one of my ancestors who was a minister of that church in the late 1600s. Yeah. So faith has always been a part of me and my family. And what I like to say about prayer is about how important it is for all of us to do it. Prayer is peace. Prayer allows us to put our trials and tribulations into God's hands. And that frees us to continue to act well for our day's issues that we have to work with. Prayer is peace. I really believe that. Thank you for being here. And thank you to this country for having a National Day of Prayer to remind us about how important it is to pray. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice, and appreciate you coming out today. Help us approve and celebrate this annual recognition and proclamation. I'm glad we do this every year. As was already mentioned, you know, I too pray for wisdom. We make a lot of decisions here, important decisions, and always ask for wisdom and to be a better person. Church volunteer at my local church, and I'll just highlight one thing in terms of like how important it is, not just for our country, but for people in charge and leadership, and understanding that sometimes we do, you know, we need that support from prayer to help us in our decisions. Let's not forget there was a great story when they were arguing, our founding fathers, over the Constitution. You know, they weren't sure. They were the fighting. I can just imagine the infighting going on back then. And they stopped and they prayed about what to do. And it was only after they did that stop, the prayer, that they were able to come back together again. And they came up with the Constitution, the finalization of what we ended up with. So even they recognized they needed that support. They needed that wisdom in helping to build our great nation. And so just as, you know, I'm just so proud to do this every year. And, you know, thank you again for coming out today.
Chair Bremer, do you have some comments?
I do. You know, I think it's beautiful to hear and see all of my colleagues' perspectives too. And I think that prayer and faith are truly a unifying thing if we allow them to be. You know, for me, so Commissioner Williams mentioned that she has to come into many of these meetings with a spirit of prayer, and those are perfect words for how I get the strength to get through really difficult decisions, difficult days, long days, and for me, a lot of my prayer and worship time comes through the words of music, and oftentimes the words of scripture set to music. And this morning in particular, when I woke up to a very, very sick child, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus. And oftentimes I will drive into the commission meetings, praying words of a favorite praise song, which is "Give me wisdom to see things like you do." And that wisdom to see things like our Savior does is it only comes through prayer and study in the Word. And that's my belief. And He's never failed me yet. Yet another song. Thank you to Pastor Wenger and the chaplain who are here today. I loved all of your words, and particularly the "never alone." And that's an important thing for us to remember as leaders. I think I heard my colleagues speak a little bit to sometimes how lonely it is to try to navigate these decisions and navigate the great responsibility that we've been given in so many ways. So just to know that we're never alone in navigating those in both an earthly sense and a fatherly spiritual sense. Those were beautiful words as well. Thank you for being here today. And I would like to wish the organizers of the breakfast, the National Day of Prayer local breakfast here. I understand it's been sold out for a long time, but wanted to wish them the best and thank them for the way they're leading our community across multiple business sectors. Grateful that we can pass this today.
I too want to thank you for being here. Beautiful words from all of my colleagues on how important prayer is individually, how important prayer is for our nation. I too lean very heavily as an individual on prayer to get me through what are often some very difficult times. It is an honor and a privilege to serve the folks of our community, but some of those decisions are weighty, and so I'm grateful to have prayer in my own life to help guide me in those. But I also just really want to take a moment. I appreciate the comments around our founding. I think this is so important to me, especially this year, as I believe that we have seen some attacks on prayer locally, especially from a governmental perspective. And this is it's always an interesting topic. If you are one that appreciates history, if you're one that appreciates learning about prayer throughout our history, and again, as we mentioned here, prayer has always been a part of our history as Americans, and yet there has also been strife over prayer. We know we've had all kinds of different rulings from the Supreme Court about prayer in schools and prayer in government, and how we reconcile all of that with honoring all of our citizens and making sure that they are free. It can be a balance at times, and sometimes we have arguments over that, but it's always important to me to go back and look historically at how important faith was to our nation and its founding, and that it is not a desire to separate people from faith or to keep it out of the public square. We hear a lot about the Constitution and the fact that the Constitution gives us freedom of religion, but it doesn't say that everyone has to hide their religion in the public space, and that's so important. We don't establish a religion here. We respect that everyone has the ability to pray in their own way, to practice any kind of faith that they want to do. That's what America's about, but it doesn't mean that we don't allow it in the public space, because it's important for the public space. And that's a lot of what this proclamation reminds me of today, that we have a history of the government making sure that we understand that, yes, everyone has the freedom to have a religion or have no religion, and yet we need to keep it in the public space. It's important to keep it in the public space. So I really appreciate you being here. And with that, I think we are ready for a vote unless there are additional comments. Okay, hearing none. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Chair Bremer.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. That passes unanimously, and I think we'll take just a moment to get a photo. we'll call this meeting back to order and move on to item 11.
Item number 11 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up.
Item 12.
Item number 12, resolution to amend the existing area building code by adopting and applying the Pikes Peak Regional Building Code 2023 edition. Nathan Whitney, First Assistant County Attorney, Virginia Kuchitska, Regional Building Council, Pikes Peak Regional Building Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Nathan Whitney, First Assistant County Attorney. By way of background on this matter, the board held a work session on March 21st regarding the proposed amended 2023 Pikes Peak Regional Building Code. Notice of this meeting was published in the Gazette on April 10th. An affidavit of publishing is being made part of the record. And also by way of background, new law imposed and enacted in 2022 has essentially made it so that if the board does not adopt the proposed 2023 Pikes Peak Regional Building Code, more restrictive energy requirements may be placed and enforced upon the county and the builders in the county pursuant to statute if the board does not act prior to July 1st of this year. So that is part of the reason for the proposed amendments. The proposed amendments will be less restrictive, saving money for builders and consumers than the proposed changes that might be placed upon the state. And we do have Ms. Cholchitska, the counsel for the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. If the board has any more specific questions, also with her is Roger Lovell, the building official for the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Between the legal department of Pikes Peak Regional Building Department and El Paso County Commission as well. So if there are any further questions, I am available to hear them and try to answer them to my best ability.
Are there questions from commissioners? Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So appreciate your coming here and us having this conversation about this. We know that a lot of these changes are derived from state law changes that we're trying to get implemented locally. I am interested in your perspective about where you think maybe some of those changes might be really beneficial to our community because they're helping us, get somewhere that would be of benefit, but also maybe if there's anything that is potentially harmful from the point of view of maybe inserting requirements that have costs associated with them. Because, we've talked about this before. I've mentioned this before when you all have appeared before this board. Just the way these requirements are written, it's been this way a long time, but it tends to be very often kind of product-based instead of requirement-based. So, there's specifications on what type of building materials and where certain things are located and all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes it feels like it ought to be more about a requirement and then allow developers to innovate, having still needing to meet the requirement, but sometimes not having the ability to have some flexible ways to solve these problems and ensure that housing is safe. So what's in here that you think is beneficial, and what's in here that you think maybe is going to add cost to, our houses when we build them here?
Building, and I will turn it over to Mr. Lovell, the regional building official. With some of the materials that were provided to you, you should have also received a copy of the opinion letter and the position. Pikes Peak Regional Building Department took very specific to House Bill 221362 as of last year that focuses your question and some of the answers that you will also hear from Mr. Lovell as well.
Thank you, Commissioner, and that's a great question, and it's kind of a tricky one to answer. For me personally, it's about choice, and that homeowners, builders, contractors, business owners should have the choice on how they want to comply with the code. With that said, there are, if we look at the building codes in general, the International Building Code, the International Residential Code, those codes have very minor changes. They've been refined, and if anything, they have some additional exceptions in them to make them a little bit more flexible. As codes tend to age, the level of changes that you see in each version tend to decrease. We've already gone through that with the International Residential Code, so the codes are becoming more refined. The Energy Code is one of the biggest changes. There's probably two big changes that we've had in these codes, one being the Energy Code provisions, the other being the accessibility provisions. I'll just speak real briefly on the accessibility provisions. So the accessibility provisions have been revised significantly. Probably one of the biggest revisions that we've seen to accessibility codes in at least the last 10 to 15 years. That will, in new construction, and that will apply to new construction, not existing construction, but that will increase accessibility for people who are disabled and have some special needs. So while there is an additional cost associated with that, it is an additional level of access for those individuals. As far as the Energy Code goes, it's really kind of a double-edged sword. What we've done is the code that we have put forth is a stepping stone towards the state codes. So it is a significant increase in energy efficiency and cost associated with compliance from where we are right now, but it's not to the level of the state mandated code after July 1st of 2023. It does come with additional cost. It simply costs more to build more efficient construction, but it also does come with more efficient construction and decreased utility bills and increased energy efficiency. The 2021 International Energy Conservation Code also has a number of ways to go about compliance. So there is choice in how the contractors, designers, and builders can comply with the codes. There's a prescriptive path where it's really just like a recipe book. You take out, here are the pieces that you need. And that's the quick, simple, easy way to do it. It's still not real simple, but it's the quick way to do it. All the way through to computer modeling type of scenarios that you can, I liken that to, you spend more time on the design phase and less money and time on the construction phase of it. Does that kind of address your questions?
Well, it does, but and I appreciate the comments that you made. I do have maybe one quick follow-up, and I appreciate, and this is in reference to the energy code. So like anything else, we're always trying to figure out how do we make the cost of home ownership less expensive. Well, certainly one of those is if you have maybe some particular type of upfront investment, in this case, we're talking energy code upfront investment, but it really could be anything, then the counter side of that would be you save money in the long-term ownership of the home. And then, of course, in business, we talk about that on a cost and benefit ratio called a return on investment, an ROI. And businesses often make decisions about investing in upfront costs based on how many years it takes to get a return on investment. So this may not be possible to answer because maybe there's a lot of variety and different types of homes and that kinds of thing. But has anybody done an assessment on, through the adoption of these codes, do we get a return on that in upfront investment? And because, in some of these cases, like if the return is 2 or 3 or 5 or maybe even 10 years or something, it might be well worth it, right? But if the return on investment can never be recovered, through the lifespan of the house, then it begs the question, why are we doing it? So I don't know if anybody's done that kind of work and has some kind of answer to that question.
Thank you, Commissioner. The National Association of Home Builders did do an analysis of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and went through a very detailed analysis of the return on investment of some of those elements within that. Now, keep in mind, that study applied to the 2021 code unamended. We have put forward a number of amendments that provide some additional flexibility and remove some of the requirements of the 2021 code. And the best, you can make statistics say what you want to say. And the reality is, with the different methods of compliance through the code, you might have one that has a shorter return on investment than another. But it comes down to, it's a very complicated code with a lot of different options in it. With that said, there were, that study did break down and go into detail on some of the specific provisions in the energy code. And I'm trying to remember, I know I have it probably in here somewhere, but one of the, if I remember correctly, one of the elements was basement insulation, and they were increasing the required insulation on the inside wall of the basement. And I want to say that one had upwards of at least 100-year return on investment. So 100-year return on investment on a house. Clearly, that's not something that anybody, at least in this room, is ever going to see. So that is one of the areas where we were able to follow the previous code, the 2018 code, and loosen that requirement a little bit. And we really tried to focus on those that had the much higher return on investment. There were others that were in the 3 to 5 year range. What I don't recall is what the overall return on investment was, and I don't even know if that was part of the study.
Thank you. I think you've answered my question sufficiently. The part that I really appreciated is that you actually did look at that return on investment kind of calculation, and you did it based on individual new requirements. And you're right. I mean, it's hard to come to aggregate because you don't know what houses will use what. But I appreciate actually that you did that in cases where you could not find that return on investment. You worked on taking a different path because it didn't look like it would mean anything to anybody here.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. That was a big part of what we did. There were two studies. Well, there were two primary studies with relation to this code. One that was conducted by the National Association of Home Builders, and the other one that was conducted by, I believe I'm correct, Pacific Northwest Laboratories. One of those studies indicated that there was a significant cost increase to home construction. The other one said there's no cost increase, there's only a net savings. So, there's, again, you can make statistics say what you want to say, but the fact of the matter is, when you increase insulation, when you add additional air barriers, when you add labor, that costs money. So there definitely is a cost associated with it.
Thank you.
Other questions and or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Vice. So again, appreciate this. Difficulty I have is, it was kind of mentioned and you kind of touched on it there, on what are savings or reductions. These are not savings to the public. These are added costs. So when they say we're passing something that will, I guess, save us a couple of years, it's not really saving residents money, home buyers money. It's reducing how much of an increase they'll be forced to pay. And unfortunately, these things hurt housing affordability. So we have the Democrats in the state legislature saying that they're passing all these things. At the same time, they keep trying to find new ways to make housing affordable, or they say find new ways to make housing affordable. They keep adding more and more costs to housing. And what does it do? It hurts those that are least able to afford getting into their own home when you increase the cost to get into it. And they will say, well, this is saving their monthly energy bills, utility bills. Well, guess what? If they can't get into the house, they're not seeing those savings. They're going to continue to rent and have to pay those utility bills in their rent. They're not going to be able to afford to get into these homes. So these ideas and these upgrades, I get it for accessibility, safety. Those are the changes that absolutely make sense. I agree with that. We support those. It's all these other energy efficiencies that they're talking about that an individual person can pay for upgrades. The people that want those, but the people at least able to get into a new home or a home, they can't afford these upgrades. They can't afford these costs. And I've given the story a couple months ago when we did the work session, but it was relevant then. But I'm going through a rental property purchase right now. So I'm purchasing something rental property, and I was doing a walkthrough the other day. And they highlighted, it's like, oh, and this is a low sound whisper mode, and whatever they talked about, air circulator. That it's an added part of the housing requirements. Why? Because years ago they added so much efficiency into the making it airtight that the added cost of that, I'm sure, was hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to make it that airtight. Now it was so airtight, it was dangerous, and they needed to force air circulation back into the home. And they added a new requirement to put this air circulator. So all they've done is added more and more costs to housing with these bad ideas. And so if we want the upgrades, let's let the people pay for those upgrades and options. But when they keep adding more and more costs, it is making housing affordability worse and worse. And so I just wish they'd stick to the basics, safety, right? That we want that. I support that. But a lot of these other things are just bad ideas that are making the housing situation worse. And so, again, I'm not sure if I can support this one with all the bad choices the state keeps doing it. And we need to start making noise at what the state does. These mandates are bad for our communities because it is hurting housing affordability and hurting those least able to get into homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We took a very strong stance and testified before both the House and Senate last year in opposition to the bill that drove this 1362. And our primary focus was affordability and the fact that there is an increased cost associated with it. And the argument that you get back is, yes, but it increases energy efficiency. And the argument that I've heard this year in relation to other discussions about affordability at the state level is we need to stop talking about cost. The cost is the cost. So this is what's coming down from the state. And unfortunately, this is a situation where we're doing the best that we can to reduce the increased cost. Thank you for pointing that out.
And I appreciate all the great work you guys have done. I know you guys have fought hard on this, and what you're proposing here is the best option that you guys could come up with because they put you in a difficult situation. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions from commissioners? Chair Bremer, did you have any comments or questions?
I do not. Good full discussion. To Commissioner Gonzalez's point, I do believe that, we don't like what we're having to deal with, but I think that that we really have to, I honestly think that we have to pass this regardless of whether we believe in the things that were driving the decisions to this point, because otherwise I think PPRBD would be dealing with an awful lot of insurance and logistical issues if we do not go to the currently accepted and mandated standards at this point, sadly.
I'll just make a few comments as well. Serving on the Regional Building Board, certainly we've had a lot of conversations over this code. I do appreciate the diligence that Regional Building staff has put in on this. And I know without a doubt that you have done everything that you possibly can to mitigate the negative impacts of adopting this code and making sure that we have the least restrictive that we are able to get. I know that you fought pretty hard on 1362, and we've had a lot of these. A lot of these conversations, obviously in the work session, there were lots of comments as well. I agree with Chair Brummer that it's not an ideal situation. We certainly wish that we could have fought on 1362 and killed that bill and not had that be a part of what is affecting our community. Nonetheless, that is the way that government works. And so we are looking at supporting this today and giving some relief from that, or not supporting it and ending up in a worse situation. It's not a great position to be in, but it is the one that we're in. And so it is clear to me that the right thing in my mind to do is to support this, to give as much relief as possible. However, that does not mean that I don't think we should continue to make noise about exactly these things. It's part of what we have been doing as we were talking about this terrible land use bill that's coming through. I've talked to the governor's office. What about 1362? You're ignoring what is making housing more expensive in Colorado. But it purely comes down to exactly as has been said. Return on investment is great, but if you don't have the money to invest, all you're doing is pricing people out of housing. And then this state government's solution is to take more of everyone's tax dollars and subsidize the things that they've made more expensive. This is not a solution this is not good governance. It is not a solution for families who are experiencing increased costs. As I said earlier today, there's only one way to make things less expensive for people, and that is for the government to stop charging them more money for everything. It's pretty simple. It's a basic, we've got basic principles of economics here. It continues to absolutely flabbergast me that our leaders cannot acknowledge and follow basic economic principles. But nevertheless, this is where we are. So as frustrating as it is, and as much as I do believe we do still need to make that noise, we need to continue to make sure residents understand what predicaments that we are in here and the causes of those at our state government. Nevertheless, I do think that our best way of protecting citizens at this point is to approve this. So that's all the comments I have. Are there any additional questions or comments from commissioners?
Thank you, Madam Vice. I did forget one comment. I've been using this the last year, is that national studies do indicate that 40% with the added costs of government regulation at all levels adds about 40% to the cost of, or is about 40% of the cost of housing. So this just continues to add to those costs. And but I do believe the arguments here and we need to get this so it's not as terrible of what we might have. I'll be reluctantly supporting. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
I'm just ready to make a motion. I move to amend the existing area building code by adopting and applying the Pikes Peak Regional Building Code 2023 edition. Even though we don't like it, I'll still move it.
I'll second that and include in my second the same criticism that I just heard from the motion. Thank you.
Okay, last call for comment or question from commissioners before we vote. Hearing none, we'll proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Chair Brummer.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you so much for being here and all your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we are on item 13.
Item number 13 is department and committee reports, non-action items, and there are none.
Item 14.
Item 14 is the addendum, and there are no addendums today.
Item 15.
Item 15 is the executive session, and there's no requests for executive session.
So we've concluded our business today, and so we will adjourn this meeting. We will have a land use meeting at 1 o'clock.